It really is good to have friends.
There's a button under the handle. Press that in.
That is a stupid design.
All of the good and none of the bad.
I don't need another speech by some impotent whack job whose mother didn't love him, rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
You heard it up top. We've gathered a ragtag crew of fucking jerks, thieves, killers, assassins, dumbasses, raccoons, trees. That's right, all your favorites here, because we're talking the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 with your hosts, Colin Warlock.
I like Colin Warlock. I guess I'll be Mike the Podcaster.
And this is Star Jacob Lord.
Yeah. Hey, that's
Jacob
my Star Lord.
Whichever...
That's my Star Lord right there.
My lords,
well,
my Star Lords, welcome.
Yes, my Star Lords, welcome. Mammals and other species of all kind, welcome in. We're here to talk the latest Marvel movie, the finale of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a tank top because, you know, the guns are out because James Gunn, his final ride with the MCU moving over to DC.
Wow.
That extended joke aside, we're happy that you're here. And if audio is a little bit different, we just know that Colin is actually up in orbit right now, keeping an eye on the galaxy, as we'll discuss where things stand at the end of this movie after our full spoiler discussion. But, you know, happy to have everyone here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, dude. Very excited to be talking Guardians of the Galaxy. I know we're all kind of excited about it. Jacob, you seemed super pumped going to this one after maybe being let down by the last few Marvelies.
Yeah, well, you know, we all kind of feel the Marvel fatigue a little bit lately, but Guardians, out of all the standalone franchises of the MCU, Guardians is really probably my favorite. And
wow.
So you know, I was excited for this movie. You know, coming back to this team and everything. I rewatched the first 2 volumes earlier this week, and they still hold up. You know, they're really good. And I think, yeah, it's the best trilogy in the MCU. We can say that now. And I'm really excited to talk about it.
You texted us you were crying from Volume 2.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
2 made me tear up a little bit. 3, maybe. We'll see.
Well, I've definitely got moments to talk about that. But how about you, Mike?
Yeah.
Did you rewatch these bad boys?
I didn't rewatch them. I could have. I chose not to. But I do like these movies a lot. I mean, I saw the first Guardians, I think 2014, 15, whenever it came out. It was the second movie of a double feature at the drive-in in Ohio. I was like home for the summer, and I got to see it at a drive-in, which was very cool.
What was the other film? Do you remember?
I don't. I just want to say also, listeners at home, you know, we did potentially on this mission save a bunch of children, and if you can hear them screaming outside and frolicking, that's what's going on. A lot of kids in this apartment, but anyway.
Sure.
I don't know.
Let me just say this about you know, let me say this about the first 2 parts. I'm glad I watched them before this one because I really think that the whole storyline works really well as a 3 movie. As a trilogy, and so revisiting those, you know, I hadn't seen those movies probably in a couple years, so revisiting those kind of refamiliarize myself with the characters and like what they were up to and everything. I think that really helped going into 3. And I watched the holiday special earlier last December, a couple months ago, right? So saw that. I also rewatched, you know, Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame somewhat recently, so I'm familiar with their storyline from that, and you know, it's all there in my head now. So
yeah, it's a great 3.5 movie if you count the holiday special, I guess, which I haven't seen yet. I mean, do you recommend checking it out? Is that additive to the
fun.
Guardians experience?
Yeah, I mean,
this one I'd say very so, right, Jacob?
Yeah, it's like it starts. It's a lot like how the third one starts. They're hanging out on nowhere.
It's almost a prequel.
Yeah, and
like
you know,
a prologue.
Peter Quill's sad about Gamora and stuff, so they decide to, as a Christmas present, kidnap the actor Kevin Bacon, who's his favorite actor, right? Gamora or Mantis and
favorite hero,
Drax do.
Not an actor, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So of course Drax and Mantis take it too far, as they usually do, and shenanigans ensue, but it's pretty fun for a
Okay.
holiday special, I think. Better than the Star
Yeah.
Wars holiday special, that's for sure.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I prefer never to talk about that again.
Shout out, Cargo Bay.
It's going to be my contract. Yeah, shout out to Cargo Bay for doing that one with us. They're guarding a galaxy far, far away with us when we had to go through that together. For sure. I guess they also set up, we'll see in this movie, slight early spoilers on everything, but like a little bit of Mantis and Peter being related somewhat. I guess that's more explained in the Christmas thing from what I understand. So
Yeah,
that's where it's
that's the
introduced.
full-on plot. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like a prologue to the third movie if you do watch it. But I didn't watch anything, and I still had, a pretty good time. We'll get into detail, but I watched it kind of just off memory, and I do like these movies, and I think it's a pretty solid movie. So we'll just have to get there when we get there. But Colin, did you prep these two? Did you watch both or what?
Well, one, I called it a prequel. Prologue, you're exactly right. That is what it is, Mike. Well, Mike, I'm a 33-year-old man, which means I did the thing I do, I guess, like every 2 months where I like dust off the old Disney Plus app, click on it because a Star Wars thing or a Marvel thing is either released or coming up. And I did rewatch the Guardians of the Galaxies 1 and 2. Did not rewatch the holiday special. Watched that in the past as well, like you, Jacob. I gotta say, I got some pretty hot takes about how this franchise was very inspired by and an attempt to do, let's do a Star Wars in the Marvel Universe. But then I think, and what I'm going to argue this episode is, I mean, does it maybe have more influence than Star Wars now? I think this franchise is one of the most influential franchises in movie making right now.
Well, Colin, I kind of agree with you because I think especially the first Guardians movie really changed what the MCU was, like what it was before Guardians and what it was after Guardians. The before Guardians was the Iron Man, Captain America, setting up all those the OG Avengers, right, and doing their origin stories and everything. Very basic, kind of comic book movies. Guardians came in and had so much personality and such strong character that it really just changed the whole way like the MCU movies are seen or the way they're made, like changed kind of the house style, if you will. And so I think James Gunn had a lot to do with that, actually.
Yeah, and it kind of came out of nowhere. Like I said, I remember seeing it at a drive-in theater, like on the bed of a pickup truck and a couch. So, but it's like I remember being amazed by how much better it was than I thought it would be because it's a lot of obscure characters and stuff. And the way they can introduce so many characters, develop this kind of chemistry between them quickly. And then also I think the humor, kind of that Marvel quippiness that everyone's kind of getting burnt out. I think that was started here and it wasn't, in bad taste anymore. It wasn't like overplayed. It was like a right, fresh thing. And then every movie, that became added to house
and that's
style,
something
like
that James Gunn sort of brought with him from his earlier movies and that kind of thing, and really changed the whole game as far as MCU. And pretty much everyone's been trying to copy it ever since. And
the big ones that you see are literally Warner Brothers saying, make the Suicide Squad, knock the off, Suicide Squad, make that Guardians of the Galaxy. People like freak team up movies, teens especially. And you're like,
unlikely families that come together.
Take away from Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes.
James Gunn's great at that.
Dungeons and Dragons is kind of Guardians of the Galaxy-esque.
Yeah.
I
think it's something that James Gunn has sort of perfected over the years between these three movies. Like you said, Suicide Squad, the unlikely team up, the sort of broken characters that come together, form a bond, and
family. Wouldn't you say the Fast
and even with
and
the Peacemaker show
kind of started going like, aren't we kind of like the Guardians of the Earth?
Yeah, basically.
Hey, they're in space too now. Who knows?
Well,
yeah.
Well,
I think that's a good place to leave it. I think as we talk about the latest installment and then how we feel about it and maybe other influences on how we got here. So let's dive right in and let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Let's grab your Zune and press play, baby, because we're about to dive right into it right after this.
We're back. We're talking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. No animals or podcasters were harmed in the recording of this episode. Let's say that up top as well. I'm very excited to talk Guardians of the Galaxy. We just talked about how we watched all these films. Let's kind of get there for a minute. Let's talk James Gunn for a second. Jacob, you very astutely said they kind of bring this guy in who's not like really a household name or like a well-known guy, but they're going like, we're gonna pick you, and beyond that, us, Marvel, who got dealt like one winning hand in a poker game that was Jon Favreau. And just imagine that poker game, that's like a four of a kind is Jon Favreau of spades.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of Marvel making movies is just them trying to get four of a kind spades. All of a sudden, a royal flush comes up. This guy with this weird, unique style, and they see that they can win a different way. And they sort of let directors start doing their own thing, basically, I'd say, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the, out of all the directors that have worked in the MCU, like his style kind of shines through the MCU-ness of it all. And like I said, I think it really changed how the future movies were made. Like, look at the way the Thor franchise went from very sort of self-serious to almost parodying itself with Ragnarok and Love and Thunder once Taika Waititi got his hands on it. And just this whole cosmic, very colorful, wacky universe, like we've seen that in a lot of different MCU movies now. And James Gunn, he came from a background, like you said, of sort of an indie exploitation, almost kind of like genre background, similar to like Peter Jackson, how he got his start before he did Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And then James Gunn was also doing like writing the Scooby-Doo movies and doing Hollywood jobs like that. But this is like his kind of big breakthrough into the mainstream, which is comic book movies basically now are the mainstream, right?
Mike, do you like James Gunn? Did you like Troma films, which were the films Jacob's talking about, those low budgets he came from? The Toxic Avenger, of course.
Right.
Yes.
I'm most familiar with Toxic Avenger, and I know Troma's kind of legacy, Fantastic Monsters of Filmland kind of coverage, stuff like that. Like it's one of those kind of shock, weird, also like dark comedy kind of houses, and there's some great stuff, but being able to use weird characters and make you feel sympathy for them is kind of a Troma house specialty. How do I feel sympathetic for the Toxic Avenger? But somehow I do.
Right.
So it's kind of perfect upbringing.
Yeah. He did like Tromeo and Juliet, and then later on he did Slither, which is a great alien monster movie with great effects, practical effects and stuff.
And I ended up doing Super as like a warm up to the genre with Elliot and Ryan Wilson.
Obviously, he's been a big comic book fan for a long time, and so getting these sort of bigger paychecks and getting to do more mainstream stuff, he kind of gets to let loose, and over time is kind of perfecting his style with these three movies. And then Suicide Squad comes out, and we all love that movie too. And that's a very, like you said, a very Guardians like team up, unlikely family, as well as Peacemaker the show. So I'm very excited for him with DC in the future too, but we won't even get into that too much. But I'm very excited for James Gunn.
Yeah, maybe at the end we can predict the future.
That'll be our big close out. What are we thinking about that? But that was a perfect setup. Let's then get into this. So he's hired to do Guardians of the Galaxy. Goes through this whole pool of people. We've done an episode on Guardians of the Galaxy before, right? I would imagine. Have we not?
I think we've covered
I don't know, because I don't know if
but
2 would have came out around the time when we were first starting or something.
Yeah,
potentially. I'll look it up as we discuss here, but maybe we could briefly summarize kind of where the characters are, kind of how we got here.
James Gunn goes through this just everybody in Hollywood has everybody audition. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's going to be the lead of this movie. Glenn Howerton, Dennis from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is going to be the lead in this movie. No, he picks, I don't know if you guys remember this, a very overweight comedian from TV named Chris Pratt, who was mainly known for being the husband of Anna Faris, to be the next lead in the Marvel Universe, a character nobody was essentially familiar with. Do you guys know anything about Guardians of the Galaxy's comics?
I remember when it was first announced that they were making this movie, I was like, I don't even know what Guardians of the Galaxy is. I'm not like a huge Marvel comic books fan, so I was looking it up and I was like, oh, it's space adventure. That sounds cool, but not like, really familiar with the characters at all.
One of them's a raccoon, you said? What? I'm sorry, there's a tree. You just say its name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like I knew the character of Rocket Raccoon before. That's a character that was like invented in the 60s or 70s and then kind of popped up throughout, infrequently throughout like the 30 years of Marvel comics. And I don't even think was in the Guardians originally, but was later added to the Guardians lineup, which has changed a lot over the years, right, with comics.
much as the Avengers lineup shifts and who's on the main X-Men, it's a fluid thing in comics. But I only knew Rocky Raccoon from the Beatles. I was totally unfamiliar.
The name inspiration, I think, right? Yeah.
So there we go. We're getting all the origins, especially in this.
It's bullshit. And I will call this out real quick right now and say, Joe, when this news was announced, was like, this is going to be awesome. I'm so excited. I love James Gunn, former host of the show, Joe. And I was like, wow, it's going to be really cool to see what Marvel does when they blow one. And it just like fails, like how they react to it.
It was a big gamble at the time because it was not a known character. It's not a known IP. And it just goes to show that
Pratt
you don't
is not a box office draw by any stretch. Like Colin was saying, he's just kind of a TV guy.
But you don't need that big name.
I didn't know these. I heard the Nova Corps was going to be in the first one, and me barely knowing the character Nova was like, oh, that's so insulting. Why aren't you doing the obvious thing? Why aren't you just following that Earth human, who's in outer space doing stuff? Why aren't you doing like why would you waste time with this? Silver Surfer's right there, calling out all these huge cosmic big names and this character Adam Warlock, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And instead he was like, no, Chris Pratt is Star-Lord. Jason Momoa, this guy who plays Conan the Barbarian, don't want him. I'm going to introduce to the world a first-time actor named Dave Bautista, a wrestler, and cast him in his first movie role ever. Everybody said, this is going to be the worst movie ever made.
Yeah.
Right. It looked like, when you get an original sci-fi movie like this and it's not original, but people might, don't know the what it's based on. So to them, it's original. And they think like, oh, this is crazy. But actually be a box office success is crazy.
Yeah. And again, it shifted kind of the entire direction of the MCU. It made Chris Pratt a household name. We got this whole cast gave Dave Bautista credibility, gave Zoe Saldana a feather in her hat. Bradley Cooper gets a check to talk like a raccoon. But it's all working, and James Gunn has proven himself, so that's great.
Well, it's so well cast, and the team is just, the characters are so well defined. That's why I think it works so well. And the other thing about the first one is, rewatching it, I realized like how important it was to the overall lore of Marvel, of what was going on at the time, where they're introducing Thanos as a character in the MCU, explaining what the Infinity Stones were. That's the movie where they literally said Infinity Stones for the first time and explained what they were, and said, oh, the Tesseract, that's one of them. This Life Stone or whatever that we're going after is one of them. And I totally forgot that they went into so much detail about what was going on at the time in that movie. So it was a very important movie for the overall MCU at the time. Yeah. And
again, the thing that I think people remember the most is how strong the cast was in the story. Peter Quill, Earth Boy, listening to his little radio, finding his way in the universe. Like the character stuff, there's a lot of MCU building, but really you just care about this crew, this ragtag group.
Yeah. They're very relatable characters. And the other thing is, I'm drawn to this kind of premise. Anytime there's, this unlikely family, this gang of outlaws team up together on a spaceship, going from job to job. I'm talking Firefly. I'm talking Cowboy Bebop.
Yep.
I'm talking this. Anytime it's that premise, I'm immediately in. So,
hell yeah, dog.
Yeah, and it worked out, and it's a new thing. So, we get a sequel. We had Kurt Russell. We go into a little bit more of Peter's family stuff. We get Mantis introduced in that second movie. I love a good Kurt Russell appearance in anything, so that's fun.
Absolutely. And the thing with that too is like James Gunn, he wasn't super strict about the comic book lore, about following the canon. Because like Peter Quill in the comics, his dad is not Ego the Living Planet. He's some other cosmic guy. But for story purposes, he's like, let's just make it Ego. Like it makes sense, and like we can tell a good story that way. And so that's what you got to appreciate. Like you can respect the comic book canon, but also don't be afraid to depart from it if it makes like sense for the story that you're telling. So I think that's a good lesson to learn from James Gunn as well.
I think I'm always ultimately going to see him as a storyteller, Jacob, not necessarily as a director. And I think in his bones, he is always going to follow. I got to play with a character whose name is literally Ego, and I want to do a character who's like so over the top and self-absorbed. Like, come on, like that's perfect. And you're like, it is.
Yep.
Right.
And like you see it like later too. It's like Suicide Squad or Peacemaker. It's like we're gonna use Vigilante and Judo Master. All right, we're doing that, and that's gonna be a thing, And it's like okay,
And Peacemaker, another character that was, in Suicide Squad as sort of a side character or the villain. He's like, you know what? Let me make a whole show about this character, and humanize him in a way where you're like rooting for him at the end of the show. And he has a lot of father issues too, so I guess that's another thing.
I'm an idea machine. I clearly never sleep. I'm essentially a maniac, if you go by my social media constant updates, but who can literally look at the characters no one else look at and says, well, I've got a whole story in my mind of who that person is, and it's great, and it's unique.
Yeah. To create emotional depth from someone named the Rat Catcher 2.
Oh, right.
Or Polka Dot Man. It's just, so
Mike.
he has this in his DNA. And, there's a little bit of old tweets going on, and he had to take we weren't sure if we were going to get 3 with him, right?
What a ride we were on.
What a ride we've been on. That's how he ended up going to DC. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got an edgy sense of humor, early 2000s kind of. I mean, that's when he first broke out in his career doing that kind of sense of humor. So, but people change over the years. So
I think it doesn't age well, but I don't think he's defined by that, let's say.
No.
Right. So, but that's what enabled DC to say, "Hey, make a Suicide Squad," and then Marvel's like, "Oh shit, maybe we actually need this guy's talent," and like, "Please do the third movie," and that's kind of how we get him back.
Right-wing trolls tried to get him fired, and it failed.
Mike Cernovich, this right-wing pundit, of course, dug up all these old tweets, especially one where he goes to like a pedophilia-themed party dressed as a Catholic priest, I believe. Now, let me just say, raised by Frank Lloyd, essentially the trauma guy, right? Who is in these movies? I believe that's his name. Sorry if I'm messing that up. Who I think in those early showbiz ways was not even just the edgy humor, Jacob, but just was like, if you are as shocking as possible, you will get noticed. And getting noticed is how you get to what you want, which is a career in Hollywood. And for anybody outside to be like, well, how dare you have done those things to do that? It's like, but that was the point. Like that's why he's here. You missed all of it.
Right. And also, what worked as humor in the 2000s doesn't always hold up today.
No.
And you shouldn't be held, it's using cancel culture, so to speak, as much as I hate that term or don't even want to really discuss it.
Acknowledge that whole
it's
thing,
sort of weaponizing it against him without context, basically, where it's like, if you're an entertainer, like you're probably going to have some jokes in your history that don't hold up super well today, but that's just, entertainers take risks sometimes. So,
yeah. And so that is the whole thing that went down. It did create, he leaves Marvel, comes back, so that's circumstances. Came back to finish this.
Goes to DC, comes back, yes.
Yeah, DC is like, well, if you don't want him, we'll take him. But one last thing I just want to say about James Gunn before we start talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. To show, what the difference between, good filmmakers and bad filmmakers taking the same properties. Just look at, the first, the Suicide Squad versus Suicide Squad. Same IP, right? Same characters, totally different product in terms of quality. So it just goes to show like what a good filmmaker can really do with something like a superhero IP.
Yeah, I think his strength is no matter what he's working on, he's able to inject like humanity and heart into it in unexpected ways where like the Suicide Squad is like, let's just be cool as heck. And he's like, we could be cool as heck, but I also want like emotions to exist here. And it's surprising how he can mine those depths. As Colin said, he's a storyteller first and foremost, and he latches on.
And even taking some of the same characters like Harley Quinn, who obviously was the standout of the Suicide Squad, but giving her a new angle and then having, all these different characters. So I just love James Gunn, and I'm just excited for his future.
Yeah. And we'll DC what happens with all that later on. But for now, we're going to marvel at his latest project. This is the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Jumping into the plot, full spoilers, anything goes here right after this.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, where we're about to dive in, truly talking Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Crank it up. Put in your mixtape. Let's jam out.
Let's zoom.
Play on your Zune. Yeah.
Play on your Zune.
Incredible. Yeah, we upgraded from the.
Will Zune sales go up?
Wow, I wonder. Do they exist
on
still?
eBay?
Yeah, on eBay.
Will people find them?
Yeah. You put the exact same. You could only have the Guardian soundtracks on them. That's the rules.
Right.
I don't make them, but yeah, we're here back. We have Guardians 1. We get a little bit of briefly, Rowan the Accuser and the little dance battle, and this is my family in space, Peter Quill stuff. And then second one, this is my adoptive dad in space, Peter Quill. We're all a family. It's always about family, and the Rocket's kind of pushing people away in that film. Just in brief summary, right? It's all about the family dynamic and the relationships. Peter and Gamora, will they, won't they? By the second movie, they do, and we get Mantis brought in the second film. So we've had some time with them.
Yeah, each character has sort of their own trauma in their past that sort of connects them all. Like Gamora having her dad being Thanos and stuff, and being having been tortured and all that, and Drax having lost his wife and his daughter in the past, and so everyone's coming from like a broken past and kind of finding this unlikely family.
Yeah, friends are the family you choose kind of thing, and that's a big theme of this. Fast and the Furious claims it, but this is also taking its stake, its pound of flesh, and we are family as well, and that's a big part of I think the third movie. But there's also a little bit more of individual ownership of owning your own shit, right? And figuring that out. So we'll jump into it, but obviously all these movies they have an emotional center, and so there are lasers and fights and backflipping and swords, but really it's about the characters. So that's what I'm excited most to talk about, is some of the story beats and things like that. But
yeah, and it's about the characters and their relationships with each other, and that's kind of what I like about it, is like they're this dysfunctional family, and they'll argue and they'll yell at each other, but then they'll talk it out, or like they'll figure out what's wrong. Like that's what I really like. And Rocket is a character in particular that I like a lot. Maybe my favorite character in the Guardians movies. Like I think he's really good in the first two. He has a really big part in Infinity War and Endgame, which is kind of wild. Yeah,
him and Thor, man.
Yeah, teams up with Thor. He's the only Guardian that doesn't get like dusted at the end of Infinity War, so he's a big part of Endgame too.
Peter kind of almost fucks everybody because he's too emotional over Gamora. Yeah,
which they talk about in this movie. Yeah,
what is that, do you think? Because I've never realized that he pointed that out. That's like, it only costs so much to pay Bradley, and we already have like 10 lines of his recorded that we can just build a performance around in Infinity War.
I don't know, but like his team up with Thor is like super fun. When Thor interacting with the whole Guardians in Infinity War is standout scenes for me. And Chris, like Peter Quill being jealous of him and everything, and like
all that works really, really well.
Yeah, what? You just kind of made me very sad realizing that he went through all that time like all the others did in Endgame, but he's the only Guardian who does. That kind of colors this whole movie even more for me. Jesus Christ, dude.
And then he has a scene in Infinity War where he's talking to Thor, and Thor's talking about everything he's lost and stuff. He's like, I don't really have anything more that I can lose. And then Rocket's like, well, me personally, I have a lot that I could lose, like me personally. And it's like this really, quick scene in the Infinity War that's like, damn, like Rocket, he's not ready to lose his family that he just sort of
loves his buddies.
Yeah.
Right. Oh man, it's good to have friends, Shit. That's wild to think that,
and then his whole arc in the second part is being like Peter telling him, like, you're pushing everyone away because you're so scared to actually like have a relationship with anyone that's not combative, that you're so scared of making a real connection that you push everyone away. And that's his big arc in the second one. And then him and Yondu sort of bond over that, because Yondu's like, you're me, like, and if you keep going down this path, you're going to end up alone in life because you have no friends. And Rocket kind of has that realization. So I was super excited going into 3, knowing that it was a Rocket centric plot, and I was just super ready for that.
I think he's one of the best. I also just want to tag on to what you just said. The big thing I noticed this time watching number 2 is they really do set up that Rocket is the one who likes the music. He has taken that away from Quill, and of course this film kind of cements that. So
and they set up the Zoom too, like, or the Zune ego smashes his Walkman, so he's like gets to move on to the Zune now, and he gets to have 90s songs, not just 70s sons. So that's cool.
They got a couple decades up to the 2000s now, over 300 songs, and it blows his mind. Over 300? You can't believe it.
But I mean, all three of these movies have, you know, a lot of bangers in the soundtrack. Like James Gunn is great at the needle drops, and great at making them, you know, sort of make sense thematically, with the whole Peter Quill being so into music in the first two, and in using his Walkman, so you can play these, you can drop these jams into this movie and have it make sense, like that the characters actually listening to that. I always thought that was like pretty clever.
It's a little bit Edgar Wright in there, you know. Right music.
Well, let's
go.
Let's follow on that beat. Let's get into volume 3. So the big thing you need to know from the holiday special is they have moved into the planet from the first film. That's the head of the Celestial, called Nowhere. They are setting up a business now. Now, the opening of this film is a super sad shot of a bunch of raccoons, little baby raccoons, being taken. That looks very realistic and sad. And again, no animals are harmed in this. And then it goes to, I assume, a scene that made you cream your jeans, Jacob, because you just said you love Rocket so much.
Yes.
You love this diegetic music. The opening of this film, after that super sad raccoon thing, is maybe this sweet baby adult raccoon in clothes, who I guess is remembering that scene, sitting and listening into a PA system that now plays on this whole planet that they're taking care of. Your favorite band of all time, an acoustic cover of Radiohead's Creep that he sings along to.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, man, this movie's about to be the best. Like, I'm so excited. My favorite character in the Guardians, listening to my favorite band.
He's singing your song. Like, he's just like, doing it.
You're right. Like, Rocket really picked up his love of music and Earth culture, pop culture from Peter Quill. I feel like the rest of the Guardians kind of do too, to now where they're all like into music and stuff, which is very fun. And Rocket, you know, he's feeling a little emo. He's playing Creep, you know?
Yeah.
One of the original emo ballads.
He's choosing to play that for the whole little city. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that he's the DJ of
sad,
Nowhere.
Man.
Yeah, he's like, you know, he's wearing his heart on his sleeve almost. Yeah.
But yeah, introducing the Zune, you get some more, you know, more 90s bangers like Radiohead, The Flaming Lips, In the Meantime by Space Hog, which is a classic 90s jam, as well as some, you know, more throwback ones too that sound more like the
Earth, Wind and Fire.
The first two, Earth, Wind and Fire. So I was super happy with the needle drops in this for sure.
Yeah, but we see, you know, he's kind of bummed. Peter's drunk because he's upset about Gamora. You know, they're still fixing up the shop, getting it ready to open, but then this thing opens with a bang because Adam just fucking out of nowhere, here we're going. Yeah. You know, this movie just starts.
It's very crazy how this movie starts. It's like this slow wraparound around nowhere. You're seeing all the characters, the extended Guardians family. You see Cosmo, you see Howard the Duck, you know, all your favorites are out there. And this is kind of the status quo that we left the holiday special at, where they're all hanging out at this new Guardians HQ on Nowhere. And in the holiday special, you know, Peter's very drunk and sad about, you know, Gamora and stuff. And this is the other thing about this trilogy that you need to know, is that the Peter Gamora relationship was changed so much by what happened, obviously, in Infinity War and Endgame. It's a really important part of their story, because essentially Gamora died. If you haven't seen these movies called The Avengers, Gamora dies.
Welcome to Earth.
Yeah. Hello. How are
you? Where have you been? Come in peace.
So she dies, but then a past version of her comes to the present, and this is a version that does not remember anything of the last couple years. So anything from the first two movies, it's pre her meeting Peter Quill. So she's totally different personality. And I mean, that's just really tragic, because that's like losing the love of your life, and then basically having her come back from the dead, but not really, because she's doesn't, you know, think of you the same way. That's like losing someone twice, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, you're still carrying that that baggage, but the other person has no even contact. It's not even like someone fell out of love with you. They never had, you know, it's like it's a completely different person. That's got to be a hard emotion.
It's a fate worse than death, really.
Yeah,
and, not to jump ahead too much, but like that, I just really feel bad for like the character Peter Quill in this situation because he's trying to move on, but he can't, because she's still there.
Yeah.
Literally
Jacob,
right there.
what do you think narratively about being handed that football as a storyteller where you're like, what's happened to my characters since I've seen them?
I know certain things so James Gunn has said nothing like too antagonistic or anything, but he's sort of hinted that he wasn't super happy about what they did with the characters in Infinity War and Endgame because he didn't really have a say over that. So it's like basically you're taking these characters that you made 2 movies with and you really care about and then throwing them into this. And this is the downside of the MCU formula, right? Is that James Gunn, the creator essentially of these characters, has no say over what happens to them in these big event movies. And Gamora gets killed off. And so he gets handed that for the 3rd movie. He's got to wrap up this whole trilogy. It's like, where do you go from there? Yeah. And their relationship kind of just starting at the end of volume 2. So it was sort of cut short. And so I guess that's the downside of the MCU, right?
Right. And I from my understanding, he had these planned as a trilogy more or less from the start, at least broad strokes. And so to be like, well, everything I was going to do with Peter and Gamora is gone. It's like a frustrating thing. But I think they find a way to navigate it and bring up some interesting stuff as we go through this. Well.
I think they sort of took a subtle shot at that when they're in the elevator and Peter Quill sort of relating everything that happened in Infinity War and Endgame, and then Nebula's like, that's about it. Yep.
Why did she come back from the cliff? I don't know.
Right.
Because up until that point, Jacob, the early scenes are, remember, she has amnesia, is kind of what they keep saying to the audience. And I found that very fascinating until Quill does call out the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
I did not like it.
She just never had those memories in the first place.
She's literally a different person.
Younger version of that character.
Yeah,
from another universe.
But what is shorthand to be like, what am I supposed to fucking say to the audience? Like,
that's what it felt like to me. It's like, sorry, like, they did this stuff with these characters that I didn't expect. So now I'm kind of, it almost felt like what happened with the Star Wars trilogy, where it's like 2 different people, Rian Johnson setting stuff up and then J.J. Abrams coming in and being like, actually, we're doing it totally differently. So,
right.
Yeah.
But I think he found a good way, like with that tongue-in-cheek reference. I really enjoyed that, laying it all out there and how absurd it is. It's handled as good as it can. And we go to a lot of places emotionally in this movie. So I guess I just want to kick off, like, the main plot is Adam wants Rocket, the Grand Evolutionary. We'll get, he wants his property. Rocket has obviously been genetically modified, and somebody wants to reacquire him for whatever reason, and Adam has been tasked with coming to get him. We get the big fight, and this is a pretty threatening villain.
Yeah, and Adam Warlock is another carryover from the end of 2, was hinted at. So if you remember in 2, there was these people called the Sovereign, who are those gold people, and the High Priestess of the Sovereign really wants to. So basically, they do a job for them at the beginning of 2. Rocket steals some batteries from them, and then they're like hunting them through the rest of the movie.
Yep.
And then Adam is hinted at being born, I guess, at the end of 2. And now we see him, and his mother is the High Priestess, essentially. So that's continuing over from 2. They're still trying to get Rocket, and they're also, we find out the Sovereign was created by the High Evolutionary, and there you go. Who also
Let me throw out some names real quick. Aisha, leader of the Sovereign, Elizabeth Debicki, Will Poulter introducing as Adam Warlock, this huge character that everybody with that post-credit scene, Jacob, was like, oh my God, are we finally getting Adam Warlock? I'm a kid who grew up in the 90s when things were extreme. He's the one character I've ever wanted. And you're like, oh, okay. And the High Evolutionary, just because you said him, Chukwudi Aduji, who, as you've pointed out, is from Peacemaker as well. So all sort of, maybe not all, but a good stable of James Gunn regulars.
Yeah, he likes to have his regulars. He's got his brother, Sean Gunn, and Michael Rooker, a James Gunn mainstay going way back.
Sylvester Stallone.
Steve Agee. Yeah, Sylvester Stallone was in the second one. Steve Agee played a Ravager in the second one as well, who was also in Peacemaker. And then his wife, Jennifer Holland, is also in this movie in a small part. She was in Peacemaker, and she played the lady when they're in that facility that's like talking on the loudspeaker or whatever. She's that lady.
Oh yeah, that's right. And and obviously Stallone, King Shark. So yeah, a lot of his collaborators in on this. Yeah.
Yeah, Stallone returning as a Ravager. He was seen in the second one, as well as Michelle Yeoh, who I forgot played another captain of the Ravagers. So she's been in 2 MCU franchises because she was also in Shang-Chi.
She's in the and she's a captain of several different spaceships across universes too, if we count,
That's
Discovery.
That's right.
Seems
the
like,
multiverse.
yeah.
And let me just say, as
She's
far
everything
as
everywhere all
spin-offs,
at once, man.
if they were going to make any spin-off from Guardians, I think they should do a Ravager spin-off. That's what I would probably most want to see is like some
I have my own
Ravagers.
pitch I'll sell at the end of this.
Okay. Yeah.
I have an idea too, but that would not be bad either. We'll see if Zoe Saldana is going to continue. You know, this is the end. A lot of people are maybe taking a break. We'll see what happens. But getting into it, they want Rocket. And in this, Adam Warlock pretty much wrecks everybody. It takes a pretty huge effort.
He's basically Superman, Mike. Yeah.
Basically Superman, yeah. And he almost kills Rocket. So our team's attention is divided. They're trying to heal him with these medical packs, but he's got a safeguard. You can't use those because of the copyright over his DNA from whatever, the evolutionary. So now they need to find the code that'll bypass that. And they only have 48 hours. So we get a ticking clock element. We're our best friends in trouble. And we're off
right
the
off the bat, it's like serious time, right? Like people are getting hurt.
It's filmed
like some
great.
Dark shit. Yeah. Like
bones are getting broken.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, all Nebula's body horror stuff. I was not into, but
Mantis's arm is just snapped like nothing.
Mantis, yeah. So you're
nuts.
like, oh shit! Like things are going down. Rocket's
Groot's head is ripped off. This stuff is crazy in the first fight, and it's filmed great. Honestly, some of the camera turns, it does look good. But anyway, I'll be quiet now.
A lot of homages, like The Thing and stuff. Yeah, Mike, totally.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, yeah, we gotta save Rocket. Peter Quill's like, I guess I can't lose my best friend. You know, my dad, Yondu, my adopted dad died. The love of my life, Gamora, died. Like, I can't lose anybody else. You know, his mom died, of course, when he was young. So he's had a lot of people close to him die. So he can't lose someone else. So he's very...
Drax says, second best friend.
Yeah, always second best friend, yep. So yeah, he can't lose anybody else. This is it. This is do or die for him. We're going to save Rocket no matter what. And this requires then enlisting... Well, they begin going on the mission with Nebula. I'm not sure if I'm skipping anything, but I think...
Well, we should say... While this is happening, there's flashbacks to Rocket's past. You see him, how he came to be, what he is now, where he's in this lab. The High Evolutionary is like genetically or like surgically modifying him, putting like machine parts on him and stuff, altering his brain, doing whatever, making him super smart. And then he's, in this cage, and he meets, some other friends in the lab, some other genetically modified animals. And you just see his tragic backstory, right?
Yeah. And do we want to, I think it's safe to just tackle the backstory now and then the rescue plot, right? It's interspersed throughout the film, but I think we can just kind of tackle it here because, I think that's fine.
Now, again, here's some great James Gunn just throwing the cannon out, Jacob. It's not High Evolutionary in the comic books who does this. High Evolutionary does create a planet called Counter-Earth that is populated by the Animen, who are enemies to the X-Men. Sure, all that stuff, we'll get to it. I believe it's called Micro World, is the Len Wiseman created where Rocket Raccoon originates from. It's a place populated with like a bunch of other weird little animal people. One of them, a talking walrus named Walrus, Lila the sea otter, and then I believe one called Speedy the rabbit. Now, what we instead get in this film is probably what we should spend a little time talking about, which is the level of comfort and sort of like what the message about this film is, but like what we have with all this, because I gotta say real quick, guys, as somebody who just adopted a pet for the first time, this stuff was very grim to think about and watch and look at.
Well, we should say it's a very dark, grim movie. Like, it's dealing with some real shit here. I feel like there should be a trigger warning in front of this movie for like animal cruelty.
If you're sensitive to that,
yeah. We're talking about eugenics. We're talking about these big moral questions of like, this guy is essentially torturing animals to try to make them these like super smart beings. And he's, a really bad guy.
And if they come up short, we're on I think it's group 89. So we're on an 89th attempt of him trying to make the perfect society. And then we figure out when it doesn't go right, they all just get obliterated. So he's also genociding entire
and I thought
groups.
This villain, the High Evolutionary, is one of the most, seriously like villainous, like one of the most evil villains that we've had in an MCU movie, where he's not quipping, he's not making jokes or anything. He's just very serious and very evil, and he just has what he thinks is his purpose, and he doesn't care about anything else, right?
You have specifically called out in the past in this podcast, Jacob, the MCU problem of I think in our Moon Knight episode, I'm the villain who, I'm doing the right thing because, and you're like,
right. Sympathetic villains. This villain is not sympathetic at all. Like, right away he's not a good guy, and over the course of the movie you just hate him more and more after all the terrible things you see him do.
And the way, and again, we're not seeing hashtag High Evolutionary was right anywhere, like Thanos, right? Like, he's completely irredeemable. It helps, obviously, because no one likes an animal abuser or an abuser of any form, so it's easy to frame him as a complete villain, but he is a terrible, very well performed, by the way, but the way he's kind of framed as this, like, abusive father figure almost, to a degree, with, Rocket.
His purpose is generally that, or his mission is to make like the perfect beings, right? Like humans, they have a lot of positive qualities, but they also have a lot of negative qualities. He's trying to make, beings that will live in perfect harmony, and there'll be no crime and all this stuff. So he's like, there is no God. I'm just stepping in and trying to.
What a lie!
Right?
Jesus Christ!
Some corners of the universe think he's God. I think another character says at some point, because he created the Sovereign. Like, he's their God, and it's shown explicitly that they're terrified of him.
But what's interesting, he's doing all these experiments, and all the beings that he's created, for some reason, this little raccoon who has become sentient, can now talk, and is like super into science and gadgets and stuff. For some reason, he knows how to fix this thing that even the High Evolutionary, the person who created him, could not figure out. So the creation is now surpassing the creator in like knowing something that the creator doesn't know. And he's like super freaked out about this, and he's like trying to figure out what is so special about this little raccoon that none of his other subjects has really shown the signs of, right?
But boy, that perfect dichotomy, Jacob, for that to be the message of this film, and to the point Mike just made about sort of the allegorical drunk dad, or maybe
he's
the
nice
dad
when you're useful,
pressure on the
but
son.
Then if he gets upset,
the bipolar-esque relationship he has with this quest of pursuit of, if you're trying to make a perfect society, then yes, inherently, shouldn't they be better than you? But that evil dad quality of, my son could never be beyond me because I made my son, is a very real thing. And for James Gunn to be like, that's the villain of a popcorn blockbuster where I have to wrap up all this other dumb shit you people have done, where I get to tell my little story about my like raccoon stand-in me as a kid. Like, that's wild.
It's interesting. Dark. I mean, James Gunn deals a lot with like father issues, in Peacemaker, in Volume 2. And I think the parallels with Volume 2 are very interesting with Ego, where Ego is trying to create the universe in his image, right? He's trying to take over everything and make it in his image. That's his overall plan. So there's a lot of interesting parallels between him and the High Evolutionary.
But it's the I need to use my son abuser. It's the guy who's gone missing, but Star-Lord is now famous because he saved the galaxy. Hey, could I borrow like $10 and also use your DNA to spread my seed? All of the universe. Versus the Chukwudi evolutionary, which is like, so interestingly the other side of like the rich dad in his mansion who like the prodigal son returns and he's like, what are you doing back here? I couldn't care less that you're here.
Or he's
but also he's trying
for years.
Over the years, he's like this little creature is like useless in every way, but for some reason he has something that none of these other superior creatures that I've made have been able to do, and it's for years it's been like bugging him that he like this thing has something special that none of his other creations have, and he can't figure out why.
He's obsessed.
And the Robert Patrick dad is like, I just hate you because I'm just a being of hate. Which is like, again, a very interesting angle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, to see someone like John Cena look so small in the presence of that mean of a person,
Yes.
wow, powerful stuff to do, you know? So
Yes,
he's very
that's great,
good
Mike.
with this kind of thing. And to do it now, when you see the High Evolutionary stumble drunkenly into the bedroom, so to speak, that one time after his sessions, and it's like, come on, dude, you need to come out here. And it's like, this is insane. And they're cute little animals that this is all happening. And it's like, holy
Throw the ball.
shit.
I told all my friends you could throw the ball.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're just like a kid, and you're like, I was just asleep 10 minutes ago. Like, I can't deal with this. Look bad.
Absolutely
It's not
nuts.
good.
These flashbacks are like really hard to watch. Like, it was heartbreaking stuff,
Yes.
right?
Here's what I'll say. Super strong material in what we're seeing. I think this is the best of the movie. I think we can all agree with that.
Mhm.
James Gunn has now kind of come out and said, like, this was all originally just a Rocket and Groot side movie. And it makes sense because, like, it's just him giving backstory. Not a fan of any storytelling that has to involve 50% of your narrative being told through unrelated flashback to just fill in backstory.
Right.
But I give James Gunn the benefit of the doubt because I'm not going to call it a lazy storytelling technique. It's just one I'm not a fan of, but he's never relied on it before. So it's maybe him just exploring the form, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
I
not
was
my
surprised once when it was cutting back and forth with the flashbacks. I was like, this is new for the Guardians, but also like Rocket's, like what Rocket went through in this movie is he starts out listening to this song, all of a sudden he gets attacked out of nowhere, and then is like dying, and so he's
For
like
the next
in a
2
coma
acts.
or whatever. Yeah, so I
then
kind of
he-
see it as like he's reliving his old memories in his head. And that's
But then
what the flashbacks are.
wakes up at his dad's house, and they're like, "We're at your dad's house." He's like, "Let's go kill my dad." So, like,
Yeah.
that's kind of the movie.
But
for
first
him.
he
That's
sees his
crazy.
All I've been
he
thinking
sees his
about is how
old-
shitty this
old
guy is. Yeah,
friends.
let's kill him.
Yeah.
He sees his old friends.
He
and
goes to the
wants
Harry,
to join
Harry
them.
Potter train station in
Yeah.
heaven. Yeah.
And his friends tell him not yet, so he has to go back to life and kill his
Yeah,
father.
and previously, like, I mean, again, you know, some content warning, but he discovers, like, because drunk dad's like, you're not going to the cool planet. That was a lie. You're just a piece of shit. And then when he goes back down and tells his buddies, like, yo, we're not getting out of here. And he tries to help him escape, and he's able to make the key card. But then, unfortunately, all of his friends get shot, and it's shocking and sad and tragic.
Then what happens in this Marvel movie is they're not hit by lasers. They're not disintegrated. Nobody uses magical powers. A man pulls a gun out and shoots 3 animals in front of another animal with a handgun that fires bullets. And in this climate, I was like, this is horrifying.
And these are talking sentient beings
that are essentially children-ish age, you assume.
Well, and that I also want to say, I think are very coded, just to go back to their comic roots, a thing called Walrus, Wal-R-Us, a very silly, like, walrus in a space outfit that's like a comic cartoon thing, is a little different than I think something that's coded as being in a wheelchair, or the rabbit character, I think, yes. Well, yes, teeth. But Lila, maybe they have physical handicaps. You know what I mean? They're stand-ins for differently abled people too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. And well, even going back to an earlier flashback when we see, so after Rocket's been first worked on, and he's like bleeding from the head because he's been doing surgery on his brain, and he gets thrown into this cage. His first words that you ever hear him use is "hurts." Right? He says "hurts" as a little baby raccoon, and his friend the otter helps him. And yeah, it's really tough. And then
it's too much.
Later, you know, he's doing all this super science stuff, and then the way that the High Evolutionary like breaks it to him, like, oh, you could figure out all this science stuff, but you couldn't figure out that you're not going to the new world. It's just like
idiot.
So brutal.
This is called music, you idiot.
Yeah. Oh man.
But such a well-crafted villain, really, just to make you hate them so much.
He's so sinister, you know. He's not like Ego, but yeah, nothing matters but his mission. Everything's expendable, and God, when Rocket scratches his face to shit and escapes, you know, shoots some people on his way out, you know, presumably the first time he's used a firearm, he's going to do that for the rest of his life. Absolutely wild flashback, and we know that's where all of his trauma and pain has been from. That's why he's pushing everybody away. But go ahead.
Yeah, and it's been hinted at before that, you know, he obviously had a traumatic history, but now we finally learn what happened. and just his friends, talking about getting out, talking about seeing the sky and all this stuff. Like, man. And then we get, of course, his name, Rocket Raccoon, which is just like a silly name, right? A character invented in the 70s because of the Beatles song Rocky Raccoon, right? James Gunn can take that and give it significance within the story, where he names himself Rocket because he sees rockets and he's like, I want to fly on rockets in
I
the
just want to get
sky.
away
And go
from
with
here.
my friends. I'm going to build rocket for my friends, and we're all going to go together.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
That's some heartbreaking shit.
We deserve to be happy and not in a cage.
It gives me a little bit of Cyberpunk 2077 vibes, because there's a lot of references of looking to the sky, thinking of a better life. Like even at the end of the show, David looks up, he sees Lucy from looking up. So the idea of sky and sometimes people with that ambition not getting it is very sad.
Absolutely. When you're trapped in your life, whether you're in a real cage or a metaphorical cage of your life, the sky is a way to escape. And like in Cyberpunk, going to the moon, right? And having a little vacation on the moon and being able to just relax and be on the moon, like that was like their dream, their ultimate dream of like getting away from the city and everything, right?
Just get away from it, and he unfortunately isn't able to. So to bring it back to when he's on the ropes, like it's going bad, his recovery, and he sees them at the pearly gates essentially, and they're saying it not yet, and I'm like, he was ready to say, you know what, like I'm tired,
we're all
it's
here.
been a hard life.
And again, seeing his whole arc from the first two movies through the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, like it really makes it hit harder, like, knowing the character of Rocket. And I think that's really a testament to how strong the writing is and the character writing. Like, man, really impressive.
The amount I feel for this raccoon. And Nebula even remarks like, yo, what they did to him is nothing like what Thanos did to me and Gamora. Like,
yeah.
That's a cakewalk, which is shocking.
Let's get into that real quick. Moment where I cried. So I'll point out the three where we all saw this together. Let's say that real quick.
Yeah, we all went together.
Mike came down to the valley, brought our boy X again. We hung out Super Mario style, watched this bad boy together.
2 Chris Pratt's back to back, baby.
I had to turn away from X at one point, where kind of the initial stuff where you were meeting them and he was saying the hurts, like that was, I was more than anything kind of like looking away and being like, ooh, this whole movie's going to be intense. Get ready.
Yeah.
When they watched the video of what happened to Rocket, like all his friends see his backstory, I cried because that felt like such an invasion of privacy to see like the trauma he'd been through, but also like very relieving that his friends like finally knew it and stuff. Like it just felt, it was very emotionally, it was a great payoff because James Gunn's a great writer. So
yeah. No, that's it's just wild what they did with making me feel these emotions for this raccoon. And I think in a second maybe we'll go to now how do they save him, but just to wrap up the emotion of his backstory and stuff. When we have, Chris Pratt screaming at the top of his lungs trying to perform CPR on a fake raccoon, and it is just landing emotionally. What the fuck is this?
Well, again, it gets into the Peter Quill's history of losing people close to him. Like the scene, so I rewatched Volume 2 recently, and that made me cry. And that wasn't even the first time I watched it, but just the Yondu Peter Quill stuff at the end is so good. And Yondu sacrificing himself to save Peter Quill, and Peter having to watch him die in front of him in space. Man, this series.
He can't.
We get our third person in space in this franchise, Jacob, in this film. A very weird through line.
Peter Quill has been in space unprotected, like in the first one, Gamora almost dies and he saves her. In the second one, he has to watch Yondu die in space, and then in this one, he almost dies again in space.
Peter seems like the kind of guy. No, but he seems like the guy that might take unprotected risks.
Star-Lord.
Yeah. But I think that's a good place to then take a break here, and then we'll talk how does the rescue go, and then what is the final act here? What are the human as a broad term? Many species here. So what are our humanoid characters up to as well? Right after this.
We're back here on Normies Like Us, talking Volume 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. We've been loving it, I think, so far. this next part, we're leaving the Rocket story behind. We're about to recruit Gamora because we need to go to Orgo Corp. They decide because they might have some health insurance information from Rocket,
some medical record,
because they know, like, that the owner of it is the High Evolutionary, who, and I thought this was very good writing, funds his nefarious outside the law stuff with, of course, high-end medical care and like good products that you have to get to people. I was like, oh great, so he's like a capitalist. This is good. I like this.
It's like Umbrella.
Right.
He's got pharmaceuticals going crazy. Yeah. But yeah, we gotta go to Ogo Corp, and Nebula doesn't tell Peter, but she's been in contact with Gamora, other Earth Prime universe, and like she's a Ravager now, and they need the Ravager's help to get through some of these shield barriers and stuff to get access. Essentially, they want to get in and get out. It's a heist. They would ideally do it unseen.
I don't understand a moment of any of this stuff that's happening.
It's just a lot of things to get us to the point, get us from A to B, sort of.
They try to trick us, like, oh, the Ravagers they're boarding us. We're all gonna get ravaged, and it's like, no, I called them, and so it's just a prank, bro.
It's fun seeing Sylvester Stallone come back from Volume 2, Stakar.
Yes. And the whole original Guardians crew, like Mike said, she's part of that Ravager crew specifically. It almost seems like she's filling in for Yondu as one of the new captains since he's been gone in Volume 2, Jacob.
Right.
What on earth could I have on my starship that when I take it out and flip it would get me through a force field I collide with? Explain that science to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
First of all, he's doing some techno sci-fi clicking on it, and then he plugs it in. I don't know, but I do want to mention this scene. So this is a scene where Peter's trying to take down. There's 3 levels of shield, and they need to be modulated to a different frequency, each one, whatever. But as they're doing this,
even that I like, Mike. Even that helps me a little bit. If that's what they're doing, are they shifting the
everyone has a different
their
frequency
shields to go through these other
Correct.
ones? Perfect. Love it.
So, as the king of overthinking things, this is where it starts to enter into my mind. Mantis might start to become the MVP of this movie outside of Rocket. So she's having a conversation with Peter basically about how, like, yo, you haven't like dealt with your trauma, and like you can see that you're stressed out about stuff. And as this conversation's happening, another shield goes down. As she's literally breaking through his emotional walls, we're seeing metaphor.
Mike.
And I love it.
Yeah.
So I like that scene a lot.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mantis is really the character. She's an empath.
She's the glue,
right?
in my opinion.
She can feel people's feelings, and she can change to a certain degree people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. Mantis is one of the MVPs of this movie for me. And I mean, her relationship with Drax is sort of the perfect like brother-sister relationship that started in 2, and actually it's a big part of the holiday special. Once again, like
you would love the holiday special, Mike. You're the two main characters.
I have to watch it now.
Mantis and Drax.
It's so Mantis forward. You would love it, dude.
Oh man, she really was a standout for me as a glue character for this. Like, for as much as Rocket is the backbone, and it's a lot of flashback though, he's not involved in the main plot. So for the people in the main plot, she is my favorite by far. And I'll talk about that more as we go. But we get into the shield, and we're going to do the heist now, right, essentially. But there's more that she's going to get into. So anyway.
We're going to go to, and here, maybe I spoke too soon about saying the influence of Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think, Jacob, this is the influence of something else. They go to a Rick and Morty planet.
Oh, yeah. Which, weirdly, none of those writers worked on this.
No. The rare Marvel movie not written by a Rick and Morty writer who instead inserts a Rick and Morty scene into his movie.
But it did remind me of Quantum Mania, which is a very Rick and Morty movie, right?
It's like an all-organic planet, right? Everything's goo, and they do a better job with goo technology here than Quantum Mania did.
They go to this biologically grown base or whatever. Mm-hmm. You get guest star Nathan Fillion in a cameo, just
like head of Marshmallow Security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they do some shenanigans. They got to get a security code or whatever.
They're heisting. Things go wrong. We gotta improvise. Guardian stuff. James Gunn's wife gets shot in the leg because she's the receptionist or whatever.
Yeah.
Gamora's being very extreme.
Teaming up with Gamora. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Gamora and Nebula, also very interesting, because in Volume 2, Nebula, she's still bad in it, but she's still with Thanos. So her and Gamora's storyline in Volume 2, it's almost flipped of what it is now, where Nebula has been with the Guardians for so long. Also, I don't think it's mentioned in this movie, but there's, I think, a pretty big time jump just from the second volume. I think like 9 years or something, like in universe, because there's also the whole blip for 5 years.
Avengers.
Right.
So
But
Nebula's
she's part of the team when they're shown in Infinity Wars.
She makes that transition, I believe, through those films.
Right.
Yeah, and then she's also a big part of Endgame because she
joins the team in Endgame.
She's still alive with Robert Downey or with Iron Man at the end. So her and Iron planet.
Right.
Everyone else gets dusted on that planet, right? With Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and all that.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the team for all the Thor, Love and Thunder Guardians stuff, like that whole first 10 minutes. Okay. Is Gamora? No. I'm sorry.
She's Cliff.
All that. Sorry. Yeah. I'm getting super confused.
No,
you gotta
but it is interesting.
Rewatch Endgame again, because that so much of that is like shown in Endgame, where it's like Nebula has been with the Guardians for like 9 years at this point. She's changed a lot. Yeah. And Gamora is this new Gamora that didn't go with the Guardians after Endgame and just went and did her own thing. So their personalities are like completely flipped. And again, like Peter Quill having to deal with like the love of his life being there, but not really, and like doesn't remember him all. It's like that's like my worst nightmare, that something like that would happen. Like I would rather someone I care about just died rather than I see their face all the time, but they're not the same person,
Right. And you have all these
like you.
And that's where we do get that tongue-in-cheek scene where he's like, because she's being aggressive, threatening to shoot people, they wanted to do it a little different. So he tells the hostage, like, hey, you wondering why she's doing this? She's supposed to be my girlfriend, but she's not. And that whole thing happens there.
Yeah.
Where
I'm
he
not
gets
an
to kind of
Infinity
vent
Stone
it.
scientist,
Yeah,
I don't know
who
what's
knows?
going on.
Do you
Jumped off a magical cliff? I don't know.
Yeah. Nobody
Mike,
else came back.
Do you like Zoe Saldana as Gamora, and do you like Karen Gillan as Nebula?
I like both of those characters a lot, actually. I think me too. I like this new version. Like you have to do it. I like what Zoe Saldana is doing here with a more aggressive Gamora, and I really like Nebula a lot in this too. I think she's great. She's just she's so angry, but she's got a good heart. They're great.
Yeah, in Volume 2, like their relationship is so good because she's angry at Gamora but she's really angry at Thanos, but she doesn't realize it because basically Thanos would pit them against each other as children, make them fight. And every time Gamora beat Nebula, he would like take another body part and like replace it with a machine. So and Gamora would beat her every time because she was
never lost.
Wouldn't even let her win. Never even realized, hey,
but it never
give
really
me one.
Right. So they have to work things out, and they realize like they care about each other as sisters, and they really just hate Thanos. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And so she's still on her arc and trying to become more of a compassionate individual and doing the right thing. And so she's on the team, but I like all that stuff. We do get our MacGuffin here at the end, but we also get some goofy Nathan Fillion. You got an idiot on your team. I got one of those too. Like that's a great running gag they do. But any thoughts on Goo World battle and this stuff? Drax gets injured. We're kind of barely escaping. It's some close calls. It's a big heist thing. Some goofy moments. We've seen it before.
Yeah. Get some good set pieces, some good, needle drops again. And then they realize they need the passcode that for
we find out where the evolutionary is.
Right.
And so they're going to go.
Assistant has it in his thing, so they have to go get it.
So follow the assistant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they find
a lot of shuffling.
Save the assistant, save the raccoon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they land on this counter Earth, which is higher evolutionaries.
Sorry. Higher evolutionary.
Yeah. So
counter.
They go to this. Yes, counter Earth, the new world that the High Evolutionary was building in these flashbacks, where it's all populated by his creations, which are these genetically modified beings that are super smart. He's trying to modify like the violence out of them and stuff and make them this perfect society. But then even then, when we land there, we find that they still have crime. They still have these issues that all civilizations have, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Got an octopus selling meth,
Yeah.
It's typical society.
A bunch of cockroaches, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up another side part, which is while this is happening, the Aisha and Adam stuff is that they are hanging out with the High Evolutionary. We get what I thought was a really great joke of the High Evolutionary stepping on that step stool the first time he talks to Aisha to be taller than her. I thought that was very clever.
That was subtle and clever. I did key on that, and I thought that was great. That he had even his assistant is like cowering, like even he's the one who slides the step stool forward. Yeah, like
So come up with jokes, James Gunn. I'm here for it. And then
don't
of
tell.
course
he's a little man who wants to be a big man.
The threat is that this society, the sovereign, it turns out, was created by the High Evolutionary as well. What would it be like if I made just beautiful idiots, is what he says. I went for an aesthetic culture. Great, these gold morons will be destroyed, and he will move on to his next creation. This next creation he's moved on to, these Animen, it is turning out as a failure as well. So when the Guardians are coming up to meet him now, there's these strict rules of no weapons, no guns. They kind of all have to split. They want Drax and Mantis to stay on the ship to watch Rocket's body. So Nebula and Groot and Star-Lord go together to see the High Evolutionary counter Earth. Nebula's not allowed. Her whole body is considered a weapon. Just Groot and Star-Lord go up. And he basically witnesses the fallout of what Aisha is scared of, is that during this conversation, the High Evolutionary admits he'll be scrapping this world as well.
Yeah, I'll reset like any others. And he threatens the Sovereign directly, like, you get the raccoon or your whole society is destroyed. So they have a pretty strong motivation to, even though, you know, the Evolutionary could presumably get it with his own forces, they're kind of pitted against the Evolutionary's forces to get Rocket at this time because they're desperate to save their own skin.
Now, Jacob, what are we thinking about this? Because this is a lot of, like, tying our shoelaces together of Volume 2 to Volume 3, which was, we have to pay off the end thing of Adam Warlock. I'm also revealing I'm the thing that created the Aboleths, which were the things that were attacking the society that I created, but like you hired the thing I've spent my whole life searching for, this raccoon, and didn't tell me. But I'm going to call that out in this film and say, hey, you didn't tell me you saw that raccoon. And they're all going to be like, yeah, my bad. Like, what's going on here?
Well, I wonder if he knew that the Sovereign was going to be created by High Evolution.
They are idiots.
The second one. No, I mean,
maybe
when they made Volume 2, if you had that idea in mind to begin with, to have the High Evolutionary in Volume 3, but I don't know. But I guess it was nice to tie the Sovereign back into things, and they're not my favorite part of 2 either. Like, they're kind of just, like, I care more about the ego stuff. They're kind of just there, but
what do you think of Will Poulter, Jacob, as Adam Warlock?
I thought he was fine. Like, he's got a weird personality where he's like sort of very naive, kind of almost like childlike person, because he's just been born or something like this, but he's like super powerful, like Superman.
Show them we mean business, and he like how much more business could I show them? And he just disintegrates the guy. Like, that's the most business I could show.
He has this air of nobility or self-importance because obviously he has been told by his mother he has this title, the Warlock, which is the pinnacle of their society, it seems. But also, yes, it is Jacob's right that his personality is, but what if he was the dumbest person alive? I think Will Poulter is really funny as this part, which again is nothing like the comic books and seems to have really riled people up.
He has time to develop. He's just a baby.
Yeah. And I mean, so he like
ask
he kills
his friend,
that guy.
Mother, and he points to the pet. I thought that was really good. It's like, I can't. That thing can't talk. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, he kills that guy, and then he's like, oh, his pet is making me sad now because his pet is still alive. So then he just adopts
Mother,
this
I
pet.
don't like it.
I don't like how I feel when I look at that thing. Yeah, I think
he's
great.
Line reading when he when they're like, oh, well, you know, answer us, or we're gonna blast that pet's head open or something. He's like, don't be rash. Like, I love that line reading.
Yes, I thought that was
don't be rash.
He kind of adopts the pet out of guilt. Yeah, I like that. They didn't have a ton. You know, they show up in the first act, but then there's a little bit of a split. And then they show up. But I do like Will Poulter's performance here, and I like kind of where it goes at the end. Could have been developed a little bit more, but I am enjoying the performance. Yeah.
What the post-cred scene promises, I really liked, but the rest, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Everyone deserves a second chance.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So,
I just think it's funny. I don't know.
I am Groot. I like the very powerful idiot. Like, that's great. You know? Yeah. And I got one of those on my team too. I get it. And again, that's called back, with Nathan Fillion. But Yeah, Evolutionary's like, hey man, I'm gonna create the thing, and Star-Lord's like, I don't need a speech about how your mom didn't love you and you need to take over the world. And he's like, I'm not taking over anything, I'm perfecting it. And you know, we start to begin this big shoot 'em up conflict because we need the data to save Rocket.
Peter
Groot
Quill doesn't
smuggles in
care
some guns.
about the High Evolutionary's plan. He just wants to save his friend. Thinks this guy's an asshole.
Oh, you got time for me now? Like I like this attitude.
That
Chris
was
Pratt
good.
is doing great as Star-Lord, by the way. Yeah.
He actually is.
Yes.
People
Charming.
don't like Chris Pratt, and I don't like him in most things. But I've always liked him in Guardians. It's just when he has to play more like the straight action man, I don't like him as much. But when he gets to have like a little personality, he's a lot better.
Jacob, I don't know about you, but rewatching that first one, which I haven't seen in a long time, but after this wave of dinosaur garbage, Navy SEAL bullshit, all this like uninteresting
the
stuff,
War.
Dude, I was like, he is fucking charming in this first movie, and you forget that. He is great as Star-Lord.
When I saw
that's
this,
what got him.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what got him the job. Really, was his
What made him a
comedic
movie star?
chops. Because he was a comedic actor in Parks and Rec, and then Jurassic World. They're like, let's have him play a straight action man. And it just doesn't work for me as well.
No. And he did push-ups after he was telling jokes, and to let him have that, this is some of the best tape he's ever put out there. I think Guardians 3, like even dramatically when he's upset over Rocket, like I'm like, this is good job, sir. Like I got to give him credit at least for what's on screen.
Yeah.
Again, in Volume 2, his reaction when Yondu dies, again, he's very emotional, and it really worked for me. So good job, Chris Pratt.
So I'm loving it. Yeah, the Star-Lord is great. I wish he had his helmet. Ex-Kaita wanted to make sure that note was clear. He wouldn't have frozen in space if he just wore his helmet. I don't know why.
So I did see something James Gunn said on Twitter about it, because someone was asking, like, why didn't he use his mask and his rocket boots and stuff? And he was like, well, his mask is on a drawer, like his helmet is in a drawer on Nowhere, and they didn't really have time to get it because they left Nowhere in such a hurry. So it makes sense that he wouldn't just, grab that. And then with the rocket boots, he doesn't really use those anymore because they have like jetpacks and stuff now that Rocket designed for them.
I don't even remember those.
Yeah,
I remember it flying around a little bit, but okay, fair enough, James Gunn. You can have that.
Sure.
So they're having a scuffle with the High Evolutionary. Drax and Mantis are like, screw this, we're going to go help, and they abandon their posts on the ship. So it's just past Gamora there. She's going through some Peter Quill stuff. But then Adam Warlock shows up like, I know you have the raccoon, and I need to get it, or I'm fucked. But,
Right.
I'm in trouble if you don't.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say about Drax. So a mild criticism I might have of this movie is that a lot of it is like, and this is throughout the sort of the Guardians arc, but Drax doing something stupid, getting the rest of them in trouble, and then them having to get out of it is kind of a trope that's repeated a lot in the Guardians. And they even call it out in this movie, which is what I like, because like when there's that big scene with Nebula and Mantis and Drax where they're fighting, and Nebula's like, you always do this where you
You're an
do
idiot.
something really stupid and you don't take any like you don't take any of the blame for it, right? You just expect people to forgive you because you're stupid, but like you need to sort of grow up basically and like act like an adult sometimes,
Yeah, and then she shoves him, and then this is another MVP Mantis nominee when she's like, you have no right to push him. And I'm like, I started to get a little emotional here, like, don't be a bully, like you have no right. The phrasing of that.
Use their words.
Yeah.
That's what I like about Mantis.
But then even she's like, when she says that she thinks Drax is stupid, might have slipped of the tongue in the moment. I don't like this, and I don't like that she makes him forget it. I think that's disingenuous to the moment.
No,
she should have had to apologize and re-earn his trust. Yes. That's my one criticism.
I did not think she was going to make him forget it. That really shocked me, Mike.
Yeah, that's a character flaw. Maybe she'll have to learn from that and reflect on that in her future journeys. But I think that was one thing I did not enjoy her doing.
Well, that's the
when
thing
she
is
stood up for him was good.
Drax is like, he's not a complete idiot, but he does do things without thinking sometimes and without thinking about how they affect others, right?
It's interesting that this huge ensemble thing, and for us to literally, I said the thing up top about everybody being like, oh my God, Dave Bautista is going to be in a movie. That's so dumb. Yes, in 2012 or whenever that first movie came out, that is what people thought. Now, I think all three of us have said on this podcast, like, well, Dave Bautista is just, it's known that he's one of the best modern actors.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
He's the best wrestler turned actor for sure.
And we
Oh,
like
that's
to John
Peacemaker, and
Cena.
he's
Yeah.
better than John Cena.
And
Better than The Rock.
we would all agree he's better than The Rock by 1,000 miles.
Mhm.
Now, they've kind of found this groove, Jacob, to your point, because I'm going to argue about not really ever knowing what to do with Drax.
Mhm.
But it seems like between Volume 2, Infinity Wars, and this, they kind of understand, like, you can have him in the background of a scene and he can just say one line and that's going to add to the whole scene. Like, we don't need, he's not going to be forward facing. He's not going to be the rocket backbone carrying this movie, unfortunately. And he's never going to get the cool action scene to kill Thanos like he does in the comics for some reason, even though we built up this whole thing about how he has to, like, avenge his, like,
family,
wife and child. Like, no, we're not really going to, like,
he's literally avenging. Come on, let him avenge.
His arc in the first movie is really good because he is consumed by revenge. Like, all he wants to do is kill not even Thanos, but Ronan the Accuser, who's like Thanos' lieutenant. And then he gets the chance to fight Ronan one-on-one and gets, like, his ass kicked, and then it gets humiliated by that and is basically like, I failed the one thing I've been, like, living my entire life for, and has to, like,
and he lets it go.
Yeah.
And the whole movie is about that. And then you could say, because again, it seems like a lot of people for Volume 2, their number one criticism is like, why is he talking about turds and, like, poop and stuff, which he also does in this film as well. And it doesn't seem like Dave Bautista really signed on for that and, like, was happy where that went. But I'll say to his credit, it doesn't seem like for a second like he's not showing up to these movies. He seems 100% into it. Obviously now he's wearing a vest because he does not want full body makeup for, like, 6 hours to be applied just for him to be in the background of scenes. I think that's fair. So
No, I think he does a great job in these movies. He's just at a point in his career now where he wants to move beyond just being Drax, and his whole thing is like, I can be in lots of different kinds of movies. Like, I'm a real actor. Like, I can do dramas, I can do whatever. And I fucking love Dave Bautista, and so I'm happy that he's having the career that he's having now, because
put him in a rom-com. We've said it.
Yeah, put him in a rom-com. He was, good in Glass Onion, Dune, of course.
Stuber was shouted out in the parking lot by our friend.
Stuber, that's right.
It's range. It's range. He's a big guy. But, make you laugh.
Yeah, when he was first, like you said, when he was first coming in, obviously he was great as Drax, but people didn't envision him. They're like, okay, he's like this big wrestler guy. He's going to want to do those kind of parts, but he's kind of the anti-Rock, where he doesn't just want to do leading action man stuff. He wants to break out and really try different things. I really respect
Denis
that.
Villeneuve, you really could credit with the Blade Runner saying, like, I'll give you a serious shot. And then Mike, he ends up starring in that Shyamalan movie where it's like, this guy's like a dramatic heavyweight.
Yeah. He's very
most
understated,
surprising, like,
guy in that
second career that I've ever seen. If you're familiar with him during his wrestling days, he was never my favorite wrestler.
No.
Like Bautista, like, he was just kind of there. Like, I did not like him, but he was always, like, working with Randy Orton and stuff and just being a bad guy kind of.
Triple H, and like, his charisma never blew you away. Like, promos are a big thing, and you never saw him as, like, The Rock. You could see this guy's got charisma.
Rock.
John Cena, this guy's got charisma, but never Bautista. To see him just crush it on the big screen.
Totally. That's what's so surprising, is that, like, the Rock's career has turned out the way it's turned out because he was so charismatic as a wrestler. That, this guy really could be an actor, but then he's satisfied just being typecast in these Rock type parts where Bautista's like, I want to do different
movie
things,
star. I want to be an actor.
Black Adam should have been retitled Black Hole for the budgetary team.
Sucks.
It's just very interesting. And one last thing I just want to say about Bautista before we move on. Dave Bautista as a person just seems like a really good person too. And one little anecdote that I know about him is that he had a tattoo that was a Manny Pacquiao. So Manny Pacquiao is a boxer, Filipino boxer, who's huge in the Filipino community, one of their biggest, like, stars, and Bautista is Filipino. And so he had that tattoo, but he got it removed because Manny Pacquiao came out and said some anti-LGBTQ stuff. And Bautista's like, man, that's not cool. Like, my mom is lesbian. And, like, so, like, I really respect him for doing that. He got this tattoo covered up, actually not removed, but covered up into something else.
Not about his
like,
mom. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he was raised by single mom who was a lesbian, I guess. So very interesting upbringing, but just shows that he's just a really great guy. So
Yeah.
Dave Bautista, good on you, man.
Yeah, there's also been conversation about like some of the coding with Drax or him, members of, the autism spectrum disorder.
Yes.
Like identifying with Drax, and the way he takes things literally. And he's kind of embraced that. Like if people see Drax and it inspires them, I'm so grateful and honored to have been a part of bringing that character to life. So he does seem like a nice guy. So when Mantis stands up for him and says, he might not always be competent, but, he loves us and he makes us laugh. And it's like, you know what? That's all you need. Everybody's valid. And I love that that's what this movie's doing. I was so moved. It
defines their relationship too. Like Mantis and Drax have this brother-sister relationship where they're like really good friends, but they also argue a lot, but they make each other laugh and stuff. And like, it's just so well done.
It's not always about how good are you at a thing. You could just be a good person, and that's enough to be accepted here. God dang it, this movie's so good.
Yeah.
The big standout joke to me that I really think was the funniest moment of the movie was, we should say the High Evolutionary is abandoning the Animen because he has made a new species, which are these white-haired children that are always happy and are very smart, but as he's lamenting, like Jacob keeps saying, they are recycling knowledge. They are not spontaneously creating.
They can't come up with an idea,
No. They're little idiots. They stumble upon our trio that are locked away, these little idiots. And when Drax says, I'm going to make monkey noises for you, and then does the robot noises and stuff as he's like hitting people. I mean, it is hilarious.
Yeah.
I'd like to imagine that like on his planet, that's what monkeys sound like. So
oh my God.
Maybe they're robots.
Maybe Robotnik made those and threw them out there.
Yeah, who knows?
No, and that's another thing too. I might maybe leading the same point, but we do get to, I think Nebula comes around. She was being hard on him, and she's like, I finally, Way of Water, I see you, Drax. Like, you weren't made to be a destroyer. You were made to be a father. And I'm like,
and that kind
damn,
of is, that's a great way to wrap up his arc of, like he lost his daughter, obviously, before the first movie. And that's kind of what he's been missing is his family. Like, he's kind of like he wants a family that he can protect. So he's now got his family, which is the Guardians, right? He's got all these new children. The one thing I didn't understand is how he like knew their language, but it was like was it a new language that like these people came up with, or what was going on?
Does one of them specifically say that's definitely not in my translator?
Yes, correct. This is not in my translator.
Then how could he know?
He just must intuit it. He just
One of them says,
they know like, 3 words, and 2 of them are Jube.
Jube.
Jube. And it's later revealed to be good friend or something like that. Because they say, you are good Jube or something like that. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they just want to know if they were friendly. But
Jube.
we end up with they're trying to save Peter, but Peter doesn't need saving. There's a whole misunderstanding, right?
The only reason they're on the ship in the first place is they're trying to save Peter.
When they call him,
and Peter already saves him.
What do you mean you're on? He's like, we're here to save you. And he's like, no.
I always get off in some crazy situation, which he also did a Die Hard to get out of it.
Oh, no. He did a Jarnathan.
Yes, he did a Jarnathan.
That's what we're calling it now.
Appropriate that. Steal that, please.
Because they were wings,
Maybe again, I understand it's movie logic. There are about 4 or 5 sequences. This is one of them where it's like he dives out the window. Gamora crashes a spaceship from God knows what city, just flying around willy-nilly into the Earth. It just happens to be exactly where Peter Quill is. Come on, let's move to the next set piece where I'm like, boy, you were just shuffling this deck. This whole movie, James Gunn. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Third act is getting bonkers. There's a lot of things happening. But eventually Gamora picks him up. We got the code that we needed from the guy's head. Okay, we're going to bring Rocket back. So that's what we do, get Rocket back. Emotional scene where it looks like we're going to lose him. So it's just Gamora, Peter, and Rocket on the ship at this point. Then the other 3 are stuck in the Evolutionaries compound. So then we get Rocket. Hey, man, welcome back. You want to go kill your dad? Yes. And that's kind of where we go for the big finale.
Thank you, Mike. You're totally right to say that all of that is before that phone call I brought up, because when they do that joke of you're on that thing, when Rocket chimes in, the reaction where Nebula goes like,
Rocket?
is that he's okay. Everything's like that to me is like really again where these movies are really good because like characters are like checking in with each other and like admitting their feelings about each other like constantly where I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is how people should communicate. This is great.
Yeah. And
The
seeing
most
these
hardened-
characters, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying Karen, Nebula is the most hardened, angry one, and she's the one who responds, is that Rocket? Like, she has the emotional response first, and I think that's just smart. It's just smart.
And that's what's so interesting, seeing the characters grow over time, where in the first one, they're all meeting, getting together. The second one, they've been together a while. They're kind of bonding as a family and stuff. And now, at the end of the ride, they've been together for a long time on nowhere. You know, they've grown a lot. Things have changed, and they're old friends now, basically, but they still have differences that they need to work out between each other, but they're just a really good, dysfunctional but functional family, right?
Yeah. I think that's the point, really. So I think honestly, all the action, it's all frivolous to me. Like, it happens and it's exciting. We get the hallway scenes and we get this confrontation with them we can cover, but like the big moment for me is when Rocket kind of goes in, it seems like alone, presumably, and he's confronting the evolutionary. And the evolutionary is basically like, you aren't shit. You were never shit. You suck. You only existed because I needed you. You fucking suck. And then when his friends show up to defend him from his abuser, like one at a time, like, no, fuck you. That's our guy.
Yeah.
My God, it's great. And the guy's so hateable. You love it. It feels so justified and cathartic when they finally give him what's due.
Yeah.
His face
and
came
again,
off.
with the, you know, aside from all the action and the plot A to B and all that stuff, like what's really important and what's really makes the Guardians special is the characters and their relationships and just how well defined they are and how they work together as a group that makes it stand out, right?
Yeah. And so that's what this is. And then we end up not only saving the sentient beings, but we do a Metroid. We save all of the beings. And this is where we get Rocket to finally accept. Right. I am a raccoon.
Yes, he finds out that he is a raccoon in that moment. That's very interesting.
That great scene. He goes back to the lab, sees some baby raccoons, looks at the tag. It says common name raccoon. Later he says, I'm Rocket. Rocket Raccoon.
Rocket Raccoon. Here's where I got very stressed. I was fine seeing him like try to grab all those little kit babies and like cover himself. But then when he turns and you see like all the minks and the cages
animals,
and the other stuff, I was like, there's no way he's gonna be able to open all these cages.
I know.
And
I was thinking like,
please,
is he only going to save the raccoons and just
yes, I know. I was like, stop, help them.
Yeah. But eventually they save everything. Yeah. We didn't even mention Cosmo, some of the other characters that are
Kraglin has been okay. Yes, let's talk about this joke too. Again, it's another one of these. It's that modern trope of threeers where you have to reference a joke 3 fucking times. You're a bad dog. Later, the poker game. Can you believe he called me a bad dog? Drop it. Third beat. You're a good dog. Great. Huge payoff. Funny.
That was fine.
Funny.
And then Kraglin has the.
I like Cosmo.
I like Cosmo
arrow
too.
arc where I like Cosmo. Yeah. Kraglin has this arrow arc where he inherited this arrow from Yondu in the last movie. And Kraglin is also kind of like an adopted son of Yondu, so he has like his own father issues with Yondu. He's trying to make the arrow work. He's not as good at it as Yondu, but then he gets this big moment at the end.
Yeah. Against all the Hellspawn.
Quick.
Yeah.
I just want to tell this one Cosmo joke real fast because it is the setup of the poker game where she starts it saying, it is 1965. The USSR fires me into space with no hope of me ever.
And that's a real. So that's the real story of the dog Laika.
Of course, the first creature ever in space was a dog that the cosmonauts fired up. But when she says, and it was the greatest indignity I have ever suffered, but even they would not call me bad dog. It is so good.
Yeah.
She was shot into space and she knows it, and she knows that they didn't mean to bring her back. That's so sad.
That's a true story. Like, they had no way to bring her back from orbit, so they knew Laika was going to die. But
which kind of ties in to the
it's
evolutionary
the
doing
cruelty.
things to animals.
Yes. I think
name
again,
of science.
James Gunn being like, there is a reason. And of course, Jacob, we know from watching the first one, Cosmo has been set up since the first movie and the post-credit scene of the first movie, where she gets loose and Howard the Duck says, "Oh my God, you're letting that thing lick you." Now Howard the Duck is playing cards with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cosmo, voiced by Maria Bakalova, who was in, if you ever saw Borat 2, the second Borat movie that came out a little bit ago. She plays like his daughter in that, and she's getting some more sort of mainstream American recognition now. So that's cool.
I liked Cosmo. Yeah, good voice. You know, it's funny bits, and I also liked when dude shot the arrow at Adam Warlock in the first act, and it just bounces off him. He's like, "Who threw this thing at me?" You know.
That's very.
So there's
funny.
sharp jokes around all this stuff we're kind of glossing over. Like it's funny pretty much the whole way through. Are we still pretending we're angry? You're an asshole. You know. Like, it's very good stuff. But yeah, we end up saving everybody. Cosmo has a big moment where she's holding the two ships together so they can transfer all the survivors. Peter Quill's trying to make a desperate escape, drops his Zune, and he has a plan with a little air hose. Has to go back for it. But he gets stuck.
Interesting, Mike. Very interesting. I was like very cool visuals of him doing that, and the shot of going off. But yeah, gets stuck again, Jacob, for the third time. And then we get an homage to Da Vinci's creation. We literally get Adam and God touching each other. Adam, literally,
and literally,
taking the God part for a brief, moment, and then he saves the day because, of course, he has been saved by Groot at this point and learned everybody deserves a second chance.
And he lost
his mother. Yes, his driving force, Aisha, has been blown up on Counter Earth.
And that's really the whole lesson behind a lot of James Gunn's work with like Peacemaker too, of like, everyone even if you think you're unredeemable, you may not be. Like with Peacemaker, he was a bad guy in Suicide Squad, being redeemed in Peacemaker. He's like, oh, I can be a hero, right? So it's kind of along the same lines. Like, the Guardians saved Adam, now he's going to save them, and it's a cycle, right?
Kindness pays itself forward as much as trauma or violence does. Is something that James Gunn is constantly trying to at least positively put into the universe.
Yeah, and then we also get equally, there are some things where if your heart is only filled with hate are irredeemable, like Peacemaker's father or the Grand Evolutionary here. Like that is
right. But the important thing is trying and making an effort,
having love in your heart,
better,
believing honestly and doing the right thing. So. I think right now would be the right thing to continue this philosophical phase and lead it into final thoughts right after this break. Because, what are the themes, messages, meanings? What are we taking out of this as we leave the theater? Because there's a lot to chew on. So we'll be right back. Sit. Good dog.
We're back. We're still talking Guardians Volume 3. I loved it. I think we all did too. I guess I'll do this live on air real quick. Jacob, maybe you want to as well. I was thinking about where to place it in my grand scheme of Marvel placements on Letterboxd. Of course, listeners, you should know we love Letterboxd, the film reviewing website. Now, I'm not obviously going to read the position of every film on my Feige list here that lists out. Jesus Christ, what are we at? Let's see.
542.
I've got all the TV shows on here. Could it possibly be 42 entries? Is that correct, Mike? Will you Google that?
Yes, I will.
Let's see, because I have the MCU list here too. I have 37.
I have What If and Moon Knight and all the shows and shit. Do you have all that?
I don't have What If, but I have Loki, WandaVision, She-Hulk, Moon Knight.
32 films, but I'm trying to get a list of TV shows, but I think there's at least feels like 10 TV shows.
Yeah, so I have 37.
Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, Loki,
which
like
is I have every movie plus every Disney Plus streaming show except for What If and Miss Marvel, which I haven't
Jesus Christ. Well, so here's what I'll say. In reviewing these films in the past week with watching the prior ones, I have actually bumped up my score for the first Guardians of the Galaxy film from a 3-star movie to a 4-star movie. So I'm going to live place that as well. And then I'm going to reveal right here, my number 2 of all time on all Marvel movies is Volume 2. So that is a 5-star film. So that is just cemented at the top.
Wow.
Nice.
So I
Where's
I
3?
have not reviewed these yet because I watched Volume 2 and 1 and 2 last week. Have not updated my with reviews yet, but I do have them, priorly rated. And I have a whole MCU list here. And I've said before on the podcast that my favorite 3 standalone MCU movies, not counting the Avengers movies, were Guardians 1 and 2 and Thor Ragnarok.
Wow.
And that's been my top 3 for a long time. So I think I've mentioned that before. And I think I had Thor Ragnarok number 1. But I did move when I just watched these ones, I bumped Volume 2 up to number 2. So it goes Thor Ragnarok, Guardians Volume 2, then Avengers Endgame, then Guardians Volume 1, then Black Panther.
Guardians 1 is 5, so 2 and 5 are your Guardians.
2 and 4. 2 and 4.
2 are the top 5.
I'm worried about where you're going to put 3 on this one. So I'm Iron Man.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about it yet because I have to.
Guardians 2, number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm throwing number 1 here at 13. I'm putting it under WandaVision and above Civil War at 4 stars. What do you guys think about that placement?
That's pretty crazy.
That makes sense
Above
to
Civil
me.
War is pretty high praise. I think a lot of people think that's one of their favorites, so I'd say that's valid.
That's a big team.
So I have I've never rated an MCU movie higher than 4 stars on Letterboxd. That's my highest ranking for an MCU. Just because I have a certain way I rank. Like 5 to me is like an absolute masterpiece. 4.5 is like almost perfect. And then 4 is like really, really good. So 4 is still a really good rating.
No,
Just never.
I rate 2 the movie. This is for what Guardians 2 could be. That is a fucking 5-star movie, my man.
Right.
But I did bump it up from 3.5, which is very good, to 4, which is very, very good in my book.
I think so 4.5, really. All right. So here's I'm gonna let you think about it. I'm dragging my Guardians Volume 3 at 42. I'm putting it up here. Again, I'm not gonna put it above I'm gonna put it above the first one, but I'm gonna also put it at 4 stars. And I'm gonna say, here's where we go. I'm gonna put it, Jacob, I'm gonna put this right above Thor Ragnarok and put it right under Loki. So it's gonna be my number 11 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is 3 spots above the original Guardians. And again, Guardians 2 at number 2.
That's pretty crazy. For on any given day, like Thor Ragnarok could be my 2. I kind of go back and forth between those, and those were both came out the same year, 2017. Yeah. So I think 2017 to 2018 was really the peak of MCU. You also had Black Panther in there. You had the start of Avengers: Infinity War, and then Endgame, and it was a really strong time. But I think Volume 3, it's better than 1. A little bit below 2 for me because I still think 2 is the best. It's got the right mix of comedy.
That's gonna be high up in your numbers. That puts it at number 3 in your list or something like that.
Yeah, but again,
crazy.
I think they are the best it's the best standalone franchise in the MCU.
Wow.
I like Thor Ragnarok a lot. I didn't like Love and Thunder as much. I didn't like the first 2 Thor, so it's really just that one movie that I really like. And other than that,
speaks for itself.
Ant-Man, of course. I do have.
Do you like the bit of Love and Thunder where the Guardians are in it? I think that's probably the best stuff in that movie.
Yeah, I wish there was more Guardians in it, actually.
Thor Guardian crossovers are good.
Ant-Man Quantumania I have at number 17 out of 37, so that's not bad.
Dang,
I have it above the original Ant-Man.
No. Quantumania for me is like 25, right above the Guardians Holiday Special.
Wow. I don't have that either. I didn't rank that on this list. I forgot about that.
There you go.
I like my list only because it's perfectly bookended. I have Thor Ragnarok number 1, and I have Thor: The Dark World number 37 in last place.
Yep.
I like the symmetry of that. And I have Love and Thunder like about in the middle. Yeah.
The highs and lows of
But
Chris Hemsworth.
Really,
Mike,
the
where would
Guardians
you
just really stand out for me.
Would you put this one above the other 2 or below it?
I didn't rewatch them, so it's hard. I can't make a.
You need to rewatch them because I'm telling you, like they really hold up. really,
It really
make
pays
it
off,
more
too, yeah.
thematically resonant with the third one, especially number 2. Like that movie is just so good to me. The way it ends, the Ravager funeral at the end, and Cat Stevens,
Oh
father
my
and son
God.
playing.
Oh
Like,
my
Oh
man.
no, I forgot
When
about
he
the
just
Cat
looks at
Stevens
the little
drop.
raccoon crying and it cuts to credits after that imagery, it is like James Gunn got away with making this movie and essentially received a blank check for creating it.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, and I can't rank them properly, but I did really, really like this. I have my only thoughts are like I wanted once it started and I saw the tone that we could have, I wanted to like literally have like an emotional breakdown. Like I wanted to be broken emotionally. I wanted to cry, like man tears, like really cry, like to feel it. And I felt like I was calling it emotional edging. Like they would walk right up to the line, but they would never punch it through. Like they're flirting with the Gamora Peter stuff. And like they needed a conversation with him and Nebula where she's like, look, that's my sister too, but it's not my sister. Like I feel weird about it too, Peter, but you need to chill. Like they never punched it all the way through.
Yeah. I've also been having a hard time, but I'm not an alcoholic. Here's how. Yeah.
Right.
Were you into this camp of expected deaths, Mike, that sort of led up to this film?
I thought it was going to be possible. Yeah. I was prepared for that too. And I'm shocked kind of that there wasn't.
I was a bit, and so this is kind of my expectations going in. I didn't look up too much like in terms of like reviews and stuff, but I had heard that like it is good. Some people are calling it like the best MCU movie ever. So I had that in my mind going in. So I almost had too high expectations going in because I did really like it, but I felt at certain points a little let down because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't going hard enough emotionally. Like I was emotional throughout the movie, but I never
I was misty.
completely broke down. Yeah,
Correct.
like you're saying. And I did expect, like I thought Drax was going to die in this movie. I thought either Drax or Rocket was going to die. And I thought there would be bigger, bigger fallout from these things, but it turned out okay. And I think I'm glad that it had that happy ending and that cathartic sort of dance scene where they're dancing to Florence and the Machine.
Only idiots dance, dude.
Yeah.
Man.
And that was sort of a great way to end it. And then also the Peter Quill Gamora stuff, I thought that was handled about as well as they could have with what they were given from the Avengers storyline. And to have them not end up back together, I thought was really a good idea where they're just like, Peter Quill just has to come to terms with, and Gamora kind of spells it out for him. Like you hate yourself and you think that I can fill a hole in you that I can't.
Why do I have to be something for you? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You need to kind of find yourself.
Kindness I can give you is to end this film is to acknowledge it, to say, I bet we had a lot of fun. And he says, we had the most fun or something like that. And that can be enough.
And I think it's a really sort of mature decision to not have Gamora just give in at the end and rejoin the Guardians, act like nothing, she's like the same character that she was in the first because she's not. And
they encourage her, in fact, to find her own family, Jacob.
She's so happy.
It's very crazy.
And the last shot when she goes back to the Ravagers and you see her like embracing Sylvester Stallone and see how well they get along. It's like, oh, she did find her second family, and it's these people. It's not the Guardians. It's like these Ravagers.
And that's hinted at. She's making those phone calls. Come help me. Like, I miss you guys, or whatever it is. Or I have to get back to my crew. She says like several times.
Yeah. So just a really good way, like to handle with what they had. At the same time, I was sad that we didn't get like a proper, end to their love story kind of. But I mean, I guess that's what the Avengers movies were, but it's still a kind of heartbreaking for Peter Quill, but he's just got to move on. And him going back to Earth at the end, going to see his grandfather after like 30 years. Like I thought that was a great way. He's been running from it his whole life, and now he's coming back to his roots. And I thought that was a really great way to end it.
Yeah, and to underline my Mantis MVP voting, right? She says, like, you've lost a lot of people and you're upset, Peter, in the very beginning. But you've also left people behind. You could have gone to Earth. Like, you got to think about that. And then she also has Drax do the whole, you're leaping from lily pad to lily pad with these relationships. Maybe you learn how to swim.
Metaphors. Yeah.
Metaphors. Even my butt can make them, right? But like she is like the emotional core of this, and even with Cosmo, you are so strong. Like she's so supportive, and I was moved every time she was just supportive, and it's like she's the best. But so Peter had to learn to swim.
rewatch Volume 2 because there's a lot of Mantis in
And the
that,
Christmas
of course.
thing.
And then Holiday Special. She's just trying to cheer Peter up, her brother, her half brother that she sort of discovered through all this. And yeah, it's again her trying to make people in the group happy when they're sad and trying to give him what she thinks he wants, which is his hero, Kevin Bacon, in the person.
And then now she's at the point where she has to go figure out what she wants. She did whatever Ego wanted. She tried to help whatever the group needed of her, but she's never thought of herself. And now she's going to go spend some time on her own. And that's what I would, if that was a Disney Plus show, Mantis figuring out her shit, I would love that. I'm be into it.
Yeah, let's talk about the future. So
where
I
everybody
think,
went.
You know, Drax, I think Bautista said like he's not going to be playing Drax anymore. We'll see if they offer him enough money down the line
5 years
for a
Secret
cameo
War
or
one more
something.
time.
Yeah. But I think for characters that could actually get major play in the future, I think, well, they did say, you know, the legendary Star-Lord will be back. So I guess Peter Quill will be back. I think Mantis, is one of the maybe the main breakout star that could have like her own spin-off. I also
Disney
like
Plus
predicted
series. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rocket and Groot's stories kind of been told throughout this arc. Like I feel like most of them, like they have pretty complete like character arcs. You don't really need to explore anymore. That's kind of what this movie had a sense of finality to it of, in the MCU where things never really end, right? Like this really felt like the ending of the story in a good way, because I think stories need endings, right? Things can't just continue forever. So I do like that the whole movie, it just felt like this is the end, and like it had that darker tone, that more serious tone. I was just like, man, this is the end for these characters, for most of them, I think.
Yeah, I don't think they need to rush to do a new Guardians film at all. You know, like we can hang out, we can chill. I think again with the fatigue anyway, just cool your jets. This is a home run. Let it simmer.
I would like to see Cosmo again. I would like to see Adam again, and Rocket and Groot and all the other new Guardians at the end of the movie. But the beauty of the Marvel Universe is they're not going anywhere. I'll see them again. Just relax. It doesn't have to be, I can feel secure in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they did with this, it's good job, James Gunn. Like to create that sense of finality. You're right, Jacob. That's
totally. And again, it's James Gunn's, goodbye letter to the MCU as he's going across the street, basically, to become the Kevin Feige of DC.
Are people going to be over comic books by the time he actually begins his DC universe?
That's a really good question.
Like, is that going to be real?
I'm nervous about that. I'm gonna hit pause real quick on our DC talk. I think that's where we logically go to wrap this thing up. But Mike, what was your pitch for another movie in this universe or a sequel?
Sorry, my pitch
Mantis,
was the Mantis spinoff.
Gotcha. Of course, yes. I love
that's
that.
Where I was at.
I would love that as well.
Mantis spinoff or Ravager spinoff, and it doesn't even have to be like Gamora with the Ravagers. It could just be. I mean, I don't think Sylvester Stallone is going to sign on to do a series or anything, but maybe. I mean, he's doing Tulsa King or whatever.
Jacob, in fact, I think he is in the position where that's exactly what he would sign on to be like, can you believe they put me in a Marvel movie? I'm playing Batman on the TV show. And they're like, that's not at all what you're doing. Sign the contract.
Yeah.
Right.
I just was standing
just
volume.
seeing more Ravagers and seeing more of their like society and stuff. I think that could be a cool show.
I love all of it. So let's answer that question. Now, the DC universe, he's leaving, he's going over there. Mike, I want this Superman movie to rule. Boy, I just don't see it in my mind. I don't know, dude.
Jacob, what do you think?
I will rebuttal you here because I'm very optimistic about the future of DC because I like James Gunn. I trust him from a storytelling perspective. And I know that if he's signing off on it, then it's going to be good. So I know that he's writing this new Superman movie, Superman Legacy, that's going to open new DCU after The Flash, which is resetting this universe. We know that already, right?
Yep.
But he had a little video on Twitter recently kind of talking about some of the upcoming projects that he's excited about and stuff. And I thought it was really interesting because it's not just, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, blah, blah, blah. It's like, again, these more obscure characters from DC canon that maybe wouldn't have gotten, noticed as much. And if he can do it with Guardians of the Galaxy, a franchise no one cared about in 2013 and make it into what it is now, like I feel like he can do the same thing in DC.
it is not only the interest of a Superman and a Batman. He is doing Creature Commandos. He's doing Swamp Thing. He's doing these sort of not household names.
Yeah,
it's just
sounds really
Toxic
cool.
Avenger.
More, yeah.
Well,
more
it
horror
definitely will be.
tinged.
Right.
But and then Mike to throw out not a phase, right? The what we call these Marvel chapters or whatever, a literal. He's calling it Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters. That's interesting.
It's very comic booky.
Yeah.
And there's like there's a sort of a Themyscira pitch that's going to be like about Wonder Woman's homeland and sort of a Game of Thrones kind of take on that. We'll see how that goes, but I think that's going to be like an HBO show. And then, Batman, he's got ideas for that. So there's going to be a new Batman. That's not going to be Robert Pattinson, but Robert Pattinson's going to exist in his own
pocket
world.
dimension.
He's allowed to
the
keep
Joker
going.
pocket
You guys
dimension.
are going to talk
Strange
about the
Worlds
Flash.
and stuff.
I'll be in space again for that one.
Yeah, the Flash will be interesting. But again, I just have a lot of faith in James Gunn. So I trust him implicitly of like whatever he's doing, like I'm definitely going to check it out and I'm going to give it a shot. But he's already done it with DC too. Like Peacemaker, nobody cared about the character Peacemaker, and then he made a show about it that was really good. So
my only counter to your counter, Jacob, is that I just, as an adult who's gone through 15 plus years of this, am a little tired of the comic book movies, and I appreciate James Gunn as a screenwriter so much. I really would have loved to see what he would have done outside of it, and instead he became the head of a studio that only makes comic book movies.
The co-CEO.
Wow, that's a pivot. Yeah,
but that's kind of seems what he wants to do with his career these days is just do this. And like obviously he's a very competent genre filmmaker. Like he loves genre, he loves comic books. And the opportunity to become the Kevin Feige kind of role for DC, I mean, that's too good to pass up.
Turns out.
And for me, I was always more of a DC kid than a Marvel kid. Like, no offense to Marvel characters, but other than like Spider-Man and the X-Men, I didn't really give a shit about any, I don't care about Iron Man, Thor, when I was a kid, in the comics and kind of thing. But DC, I liked DC a lot more. Flash, Batman, Green Lantern, like I love those characters. So to finally have a competent DC universe after the years of the Snyderverse and all that stuff. No offense to Zack Snyder, I like some of the things he's done, but
all the offense from me.
At this point, I watched freaking Zombie Land of the Dead or whatever. Forget that guy.
Right, Dawn of the Dead, written by James Gunn, made by Zack Snyder.
That's his best movie. That's Zack Snyder's best movie.
So no offense. But, the Snyderverse, it just wasn't working. So they made tons of missteps over the brothers. In a lot of ways, they've made missteps. But I have faith in James Gunn. They like, all right, let's get James Gunn to be our Kevin Feige, put this thing back on track. And I have a lot of optimism about it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, we are getting into the summer blockbuster times. Like, this is a big opening. We get Chris Pratt with 2 big openings. But for James Gunn going to DC... my only concern is I think he's going to be fine with the little stuff. Like, we're doing a Green Lantern that's like True Detective, but with superheroes. Like, okay, cool. But when you're dealing with Superman, which is like a singular character, a beloved character, a well-known character, when you think of Suicide Squad, the Guardians movies, and Peacemaker, they're very similar. They have a template. They have a tone. What does that look like applied to a Batman or a Superman? And can it fit or can he adapt?
He's never gone up against history, Mike. You're very apt to point that out. This is the first time where he will not just be battling the idea of what's a Superman movie. He will be fighting Richard Donner's Superman movie, the first superhero film of all time.
He'll be fighting Zack Snyder.
He'll have a bunch of weirdos saying, "Where's Henry Cavill?
Why did you fire him?"
Yeah, it's going to be
Zack Snyder.
His biggest moment.
It'll be an interesting test because Superman, never my favorite character. He's been done a lot. I believe James Gunn must have some kind of original take on it to be writing the script for the new Superman movie, to have that much faith that he has a good take on it. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and check it out.
At this point,
I respect him too for taking that and being like, I'm going to write it, because you're the head of the thing. And like, if you do manage to knock this out of the park, you can say, all of the money now for me forever.
Right.
Because I can clearly do it. Like he's putting himself on the line with this, so I can respect it.
Mike, If it was announced tomorrow that Jason Blum of Blumhouse Studios was writing the next Halloween film, I'd be like, that's madness.
Yeah,
That's
right.
the only way where this makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, above all, James Gunn is a storyteller, and he understands that, the comic book lore, backstory, all that stuff, it's only as important as how well the characters are defined and how well their relationships with each other are defined. That's what people really gravitate towards when they're watching something. The other stuff is just bonus, right? It's like extra fluff, for nerds like us and stuff that care about that sort of thing. It can be fun, but what's really important is having strong characters and strong storytelling, and I think that's where he comes from, that place. So I think if he's writing a script, he must have some kind of take on it that's going to be interesting. So
yeah. I don't think he's ever once considered an Easter egg as much as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And he has the right impulses to break canon when he needs to. So yeah, so far track record good. We'll just see whether or not he delivers, because that's the only thing. We haven't seen him perform in the postseason, so to speak. He hasn't been on this big of a stage with this big of a property. He's always turning chicken shit into chicken salad, so to speak. A very, very good chicken salad. So now he's got prime rib. What's he going to do?
In this video I was watching where he's talking how excited about all these projects he is, but he's also having to talk up the few, remaining DC movies like Shazam 2.
You guys got to come out.
Oh yeah. Aquaman.
The Flash. You guys trust me. The Flash is one of the best comic book movies ever made. You guys are gonna be blown away. I'm just I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I guess we'll see where he goes. But excited. I think to bring it back to the Guardians Volume 3, I think James Gunn gave us a great little send-off, a love letter to these characters that he popularized. And I think it's great the way the movie tries to deal with processing emotions and the way it deals with validity of beings. You can be an otter with robot arms, but you're valid. You can be, a little goofy and, but you're valid. Non-sentient. Everybody's cool. Everybody's valid. Every walk of life, every different type of life, non-human, etc. And there's this vibe of acceptance coming from it that I think is very cool in a time where there are people trying to make people feel invalid that they exist. So I like that this movie's here to say no matter who you are, what you look like, whatever, you're an important person and you should exist.
And that's been kind of the mythos of Guardians of the Galaxy this whole time, where they're all these broken characters who've come from broken pasts, have trauma in their past, have something dysfunctional about them, that they come together as a team and can kind of work together to, overcome these differences and become this unlikely family. And that premise just gets me every time, the Cowboy Bebop premise.
Yep.
So...
And even they had to go figure out their own stuff at some point. So it's bittersweet. Endings are bittersweet. We get that with Peter and Gamora, and we're getting that with this franchise and these characters. But what a finale. Good job, James. And thanks to everybody below and above the line who made this happen. I mean, they did great.
Yes. And thank you to our listeners. You can hit us up at normies_like_us, where you can message us and say, I had Guardians 3 at 36 on my list of, Marvel, blah, blah, blah. Great. Tell us, you maniac. We would love to hear that.
I own I own an animal shelter. I hated this movie. Yeah.
I'm a serial killer who hurts dogs in this film. Is against my religion. Yeah.
Bad jokes, but anyway.
But also rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, because that helps us out quite a bit. Hit up the YouTube link as well, where you can watch recordings of these videos as well. And otherwise, we've been your hosts. This is Colin Warlock.
Mike the podcaster.
And this is Jake Kuhn. Blasting off to that forever sky. Forever.
Forever.
Oh, should we say we are podcast instead of I am podcast?
Oh, yeah.
I love you guys.
I love you podcast.
I love you podcast.
We didn't say 2 words about Vin Diesel, by the way.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
We are Groot.
We are Groot.
Groot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.